Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's exploration into one of the most fascinating aspects of what makes us human. Today, we're embarking on a journey together to understand why emotions aren't just fleeting feelings or temporary states of mind, but rather the very building blocks of human nature itself. As we move through this lesson, I want you to think about your own experiences, your own emotional landscape, and how these invisible forces have shaped who you are today. We'll be uncovering some truths you may already sense intuitively, and we'll also venture into some surprising territory that might challenge what you think you know about emotions. So let's begin this journey with open minds and curious hearts, ready to discover the profound architecture of our emotional selves. To understand why emotions are fundamental building blocks, we must first travel back in time, millions of years before civilization, before language, before conscious thought as we know it. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of rational deliberation when a predator appeared or when they encountered a potential mate. Emotions evolved as rapid response systems, sophisticated biological mechanisms that allowed our predecessors to make split-second decisions that determined survival or extinction. Fear triggered the fight-or-flight response. Joy reinforced behaviors that promoted survival and reproduction. Disgust protected against contaminated food and disease, and anger prepared the body for defense. These weren't optional add-ons to human psychology. They were the primary operating system. What many people don't realize is that emotions actually preceded rational thought in evolutionary terms, meaning that our logical minds developed on top of our emotional foundation, not the other way around. This is why even today, emotions can override our rational thinking, because they tap into older, more fundamental circuits in our brain. Now let's consider the architecture of the human brain itself, because this physical structure reveals so much about why emotions are central to our nature. Deep within your brain lies the limbic system, sometimes called the emotional brain, which includes structures like the amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus. These ancient structures process emotional information before it even reaches your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and decision-making. This means that you feel before you think, quite literally. The emotional centers of your brain are constantly scanning your environment, your memories, and your bodily sensations, creating what neuroscientists call your affective state or emotional backdrop to consciousness. Here's something most people never learn. Every single thought you have is colored by emotion, even when you believe you're being purely logical. When you think you're making a rational decision about which car to buy or which career to pursue, your emotional centers are weighing in, assigning value and meaning to each option based on emotional associations. Without emotions, you literally couldn't make decisions at all, as studies of patients with damage to emotional centers have shown. Let's explore how emotions function as a communication system, which is another crucial reason they're fundamental to human nature. Long before we developed complex language, emotions allowed our ancestors to communicate vital information to one another. A mother's smile told her infant he was safe and loved. A fearful expression warned the tribe of danger. Anger signaled boundaries and threats. Even today, across every culture on Earth, humans display and recognize certain basic emotions through facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice. This universality isn't coincidental. It reveals that emotions are hardwired into our species as a primary communication protocol. What's particularly fascinating, and perhaps unknown to many of you, is that emotional contagion, the phenomenon where we catch emotions from others, operates through mirror neurons in our brains that fire both when we experience an emotion and when we observe someone else experiencing it. This is why you might start feeling anxious in a tense room, even if nothing is directly threatening you, or why laughter is contagious. Emotions don't just exist within individuals, they flow between us, creating the emotional atmosphere of families, communities, and entire societies. Moving deeper into our exploration, let's examine how emotions create meaning and memory, two essential components of human experience. Your brain doesn't record experiences like a video camera recording neutral footage. Instead, emotional arousal during an event acts like a highlighter, marking certain experiences as important and worth remembering. This is why you can probably remember exactly where you were during emotionally significant moments, like your first love, a personal achievement, or a tragic loss, while countless ordinary days have vanished from memory entirely. The hippocampus, which consolidates short-term memories into long-term storage, works in close partnership with the amygdala, which tags experiences with emotional significance. Here's something most people don't realize. Memories aren't stored as objective facts, but as emotionally coded narratives. The same event can be remembered differently by two people because their emotional experience of it was different, and that emotional experience actually changes what gets encoded in memory. This means emotions aren't just reactions to life, they literally construct your personal history and identity. Now, I want to take you through a perspective that might surprise you. Emotions are sophisticated information processing systems that tell us about our needs, values, and relationship to the world. Far from being irrational disruptions to clear thinking, emotions are actually ancient wisdom, speaking in a language older than words. Anxiety tells you that you perceive a threat or uncertainty that needs attention. Sadness signals loss and prompts you to slow down, reflect, and seek connection. Joy indicates that something aligns with your values and well-being. Anger alerts you to boundaries being violated or injustices occurring. Guilt suggests you've acted against your moral code. What many people never learn is that emotions emerge from complex appraisals of situations in relation to your goals, needs, and values. They're not random, they're incredibly sophisticated evaluations happening largely below conscious awareness. When you feel an emotion, your entire organism is essentially saying, "Pay attention to this, it matters to your well-being." Dismissing emotions as irrational or trying to suppress them is like removing the warning lights from your car's dashboard and then wondering why you keep breaking down. Let's now consider the social dimension of emotions, because humans are fundamentally social creatures, and emotions are the glue that binds us together. Empathy, the ability to sense and share the emotional states of others, is what allows human societies to function. It's what makes you feel compassion for someone in pain, what allows parents to attune to their children's needs, what enables friendships and romantic partnerships to flourish. Love, in all its forms, from parental attachment to romantic passion to friendship, is an emotional phenomenon that creates bonds stronger than any logical contract could establish. Research has shown that children deprived of emotional connection in early life suffer profound developmental consequences, even when their physical needs are met. This reveals something crucial. We don't just want emotional connections, we need them for healthy psychological development. Here's something that often goes unrecognized. The quality of your emotional relationships is the single strongest predictor of your overall life satisfaction, stronger than wealth, career success, or even physical health. Emotions aren't peripheral to human flourishing. They are the very substance of the relationships that make life meaningful. As we continue our journey, I want to illuminate how emotions drive motivation and action in ways that pure logic never could. Think about the great achievements in human history, the works of art, the scientific breakthroughs, the social movements. Behind every one of them was emotional fuel, passion, curiosity, righteous anger at injustice, love, hope, Logic can tell you what is possible or what makes sense, but emotions tell you what matters, what's worth fighting for, what deserves your time and energy. When you feel passionate about something, you'll work longer, persist through setbacks, and find creative solutions that purely rational analysis would never generate. What's particularly interesting, and perhaps counterintuitive, is that positive emotions don't just feel good, they actually broaden your thinking and build your psychological resources. Research in positive psychology has shown that emotions like joy, interest, and contentment expand your attention, make you more creative, more resilient, and better at problem solving. Meanwhile, emotions that feel negative, like fear or sadness, have their own adaptive functions, narrowing your focus to deal with specific threats or losses. Understanding this emotional diversity helps us appreciate that there are no good or bad emotions, only information-rich signals that serve different purposes. Now, let's venture into territory that many people find challenging, the relationship between emotions and identity. Who you are, your sense of self, is inseparable from your emotional life. Your personality traits, what psychologists might measure on scales like extroversion or conscientiousness, are actually patterns of emotional reactivity and regulation. An extroverted person experiences positive emotions more intensely in social situations. An anxious person has a more sensitive threat detection system. Your values, what you consider important and worthwhile in life, are emotionally grounded. You don't rationally decide that family is important. You feel love and connection that make family matter. Your self-esteem is an emotional evaluation of your worth. Even your sense of authenticity, that feeling of being true to yourself, is an emotional signal indicating alignment between your actions and your core emotional values. Here's something profound that many people never consciously recognize. Your emotional patterns, particularly those formed in childhood, create a kind of emotional lens through which you perceive and interpret everything in life. Two people can encounter the same situation and have completely different emotional responses based on their emotional history, and each will believe their response reflects the objective reality of the situation. This is why self-awareness of your emotional patterns is so crucial for personal growth. As we conclude our journey today, let's integrate everything we've explored into a final understanding. Emotions are building blocks of human nature because they are woven into every aspect of our being. They're encoded in our evolutionary history, structured into our neurobiology, embedded in our memories, expressed in our relationships, driving our motivations, and constituting our very sense of who we are. To be human is to be an emotional creature, and there's profound wisdom in acknowledging this rather than fighting it. In our modern world, we sometimes make the mistake of elevating rationality above emotionality, believing that logic is superior and emotions are weaknesses to be controlled or eliminated. But this perspective misunderstands the fundamental architecture of human nature. The most successful, fulfilled, and psychologically healthy people aren't those who suppress emotions in favor of pure logic. They're the ones who develop emotional intelligence, who can recognize, understand, and work skillfully with emotions in themselves and others. As we end today's exploration, I hope you'll carry forward a deeper appreciation for your emotional life, recognizing that those feelings aren't distractions from your true nature, but rather the very foundation upon which everything else is built. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the emotional heart of what makes us beautifully, complexly, and fundamentally human.